Oh, no. I mean, are we ready for podcast? It's October 31st, 2012, and
it's Halloween. This is Idle Thumbs 81. I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Jake Roggen.
And I'm Sean Vanneman.
And Jake is not with us tonight. He's been replaced by a child.
You did that wacky voice.
That's true, Jake. I did that wacky voice.
Oh, I'll be off killing myself.
So
Jake's off killing himself tonight.
Let's talk about
it. Have you guys seen that news video with the guy like standing in for Dana tonight, who's off? He was set on fire and killed while celebrating his birthday.
Yes. He just skipped 2 lines in the teleprompter. It's amazing.
Yeah. Anyway, games.
Oh, speaking of games, Tennnes is a game.
Oh yeah, we played Tennnes.
Oh, we played Tennnes earlier today.
Yes, we played this crazy game that is one of those. It's one of the category of games that's you can only really play either at festivals and jams and stuff, or through getting a kind of pseudo illicit build from someone else. Like
Nidhogg.
Nidhogg is kind of one of those right now.
Pole Riders.
Pole Riders is on the internet.
It's so good.
Yeah, but that game's free for everyone. There's been this kind of this weird trend of
like
games
event
like this.
games,
yeah,
basically.
yeah, event games that the creators don't
like.
Seem
Isn't
to
JS
be,
Joust one of those still currently?
Yeah, you can't really acquire.
Kind of.
I think
you
that's
could have gotten it through the
Venus Patrol
Venus
Kickstarter.
Patrol
Oh, right.
Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's in a weird. That's game's in kind of a weird halfway state. But it's similarly that one has not been commercialized by. Like there seems to be a resistance on the part of some of these developers to bother like putting in, I guess, the time and effort for compatibility and monetizing them.
Well, Joust is a weird one just because it's Move controller based and
On a Mac.
Yeah. And
It's very strange.
And Tennnes like Nidhogg requires 2 actual humans in the same room, which makes it a little bit harder to necessarily sell. Like there's no online multiplayer, there's no single player mode. Anyway,
nor should there be.
No, definitely the identity of it is very wrapped up in having someone there. So what this game is, it basically looks like Pong. It looks like Pong with a little bit more visual set dressing.
It looks like an old Atari 2600 Tennis game.
Yeah. Your character is a little like 2x2 pixel block that you move around a tennis court, and the only controls are left stick on the controller to move and to indicate the direction of your swing, and then you hold down the B button, and the longer you hold it down, the more you charge up your shot, and when you let go, you swing at the ball.
What's crazy, and the swing is non-art. There's no art for the swing.
Yeah, just
it's
a
an
bigger,
implied swing.
another big square pops out of your guy, kind of at the angle that you're hitting.
And so it just snaps to the ball. So if you're anywhere near the ball, you will you'll hit it if you're near it when you release B.
Yeah.
So it's just one of these games where, like Nidhogg, the mechanics are very simple. You're for the most part just hitting the ball back and forth, but they're tuned so well, and it's so there ends up being a huge amount of nuance, largely because you and your opponent are essentially trying to read each other and predict where they're going to hit the ball or where they're not going to be or whatever.
It's worth pointing out that while the game looks like an Atari 2600 tennis game, by and large, it has a couple sort of higher fidelity touches to enable that. Like your character is a big pixel block but doesn't move like on a huge chunky grid. Your character's movement is really smooth. The ball is almost a perfectly round object, and it has like scale and bounce and shadows and stuff, so you can track it pretty well.
A nice trail.
And a nice little trail.
And there's motion blur on your weird fake swing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's really cool. It actually, the cool thing about it for me, I used to play tennis, and I haven't in years at this point because I'm lame, but it actually really successfully captured the feeling for me of you take your serve, then you immediately kind of move in, and you've got that ongoing kind of rushing the net feeling where you want to close the distance and get those really strong hits right from the net to just knock it way out of your opponent's reach. It's got that feel when you get into a really quick volley, especially up at the net. It really feels authentic to tennis to me, which is really crazy considering how seemingly low fidelity is just at a quick glance. Yep. Is really
when you get a good volley going in this game, it feels fast paced in a way that feels authentic, but also probably can only be achieved in a video game where the ball is actually just going back and forth. But it's really good.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing. And there's also the more you play it, the more you uncover the weird
video game bullshit
that's in there. If
like your guy's dark past.
That's true. Origins, Tennnes Origins is coming out next year. It'll explore that.
That's the commercial release.
Details. Yeah. But you can do weird things like tap the ball during a serve presumably any hit. And then before the ball has crossed the net, run up to it real quick and hit it again to redirect it. Just goofy things like that.
You
can basically prime the ball for yourself. Yeah.
You can run around to the other side of the court and hit the ball or attack the other player, which makes you lose.
Yeah. If you strike the other player, you immediately forfeit the game, basically.
This game also makes Sean an enraged man.
Oh, I can't play games like this. It's really, really fun. There's more to that thought, I think.
Those sounded like two different thoughts.
Yeah. Well, there was an implied but in there. But these games,
Sean was being a bit of an implied but when we were playing this game.
Oh, it was an explicit but. Yeah. I just get really, really, really worked up. And it's always like it's the same thing. Like I can play golf okay, and like I play the sports in general, or any sort of game of skill that has such a high fidelity of control, I guess, where
input to output is represented so
crisply represented. Yeah, I'll get just furious instantly because it's all like my brain is way further ahead of what I wanted than my hands are.
Right, sure.
And
you're imagining the exact arc you have in mind. And
I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this.
And that's all the difference.
Wait a second. Yeah. So these games, that may be the source of my anger, but it generally just comes across as wanting to do immediate damage to things in my vicinity.
Yeah.
So I played 2 matches and then just recused myself from anything else. Yeah, I had the same experience with Top Spin Tennis, which is a game that on my last job we got really, really competitive in playing.
What platform was Top Spin on? Or was that like
it's on 360?
Okay,
yeah, I think we played. Yeah, we played the early it was a first gen 360 game, right when the 360 came out, and all the iterations since have been really great. I think I've played the latest one, but it's more of it is a tennis game, and it's shot from behind your characters as opposed to left to right.
It's like your guy's got shorts on and stuff.
He's got shorts on, definitely. Sometimes
a stripe on there. Oh, a headband.
Yeah,
wristbands.
Yeah, white tennis shoes, of course.
Cool.
Mostly.
Does it have an audience?
Oh, did you guys play that Rockstar table tennis game either? I had the same experience with that.
I played it a couple times.
Yeah, I played a little bit when it came out.
Yeah. Anyway, but this game is completely different in the fact that it's
the same in its effect on you.
Oh yeah, it is very, very, very similar in its effect on me.
And
just rapid fire failure.
Before I forget, I should mention who actually made this. This is one of the 2 guys from Vlambeer, which is the Dutch studio that made Super Crate Box and that weird Serious Sam 2D spin-off game. For people who know that, they're coming out with Luke browsers soon. This is Jan. I'm going to say this wrong. It's a Dutch guy, but Jan Willem Nijman. I'm sure that's
not the name of his I saw on Twitter.
Wrong. No, on Twitter currently he is John Willem Wolfman.
Man,
it's Halloween.
It's Halloween.
This being our Halloween episode, we will only refer to game developers from here on out by their Halloween names.
So do we have to find them on Twitter before we?
No, we can just
we can manufacture them.
Okay, yeah,
that's probably fine.
That's fair enough.
We probably won't do that.
So the game is by that guy,
Steve
and it's spelled
Goulnar.
It's spelled Tennnes, and there is basically no information about this game on the internet. I feel bad for talking about it because I don't think there are any screenshots or video. Like it occurs a couple times with that guy Doug Wilson mentioning it on Twitter in direct
the guy
replies
who made
to this
JS
guy.
Joust.
Yeah, and that's like the only reference to it on the internet.
Well, during the break, let's fraps a couple little playthroughs and put it up on the blog. Maybe can we do that? Is that allowed?
It's allowed. You're promising something.
It takes 2 seconds. It'll be fun.
Okay.
Check it out at the blog. Okay. It's going to be there.
Check out these videos Sean made and put on the blog.
If this is not edited out, it's probably on the blog.
I hate you guys.
All right.
Ruining my Halloween.
It's Halloween.
Oh, you're making it better now.
Good.
Yeah. It's the sort of game that actually would be fun to stream live on the internet.
Oh, yeah. We should do that.
Yeah.
That's the thing we should do.
All right. So during the break, we'll be streaming this live. Well, I'm actually the reasons that I wonder if it's actually a good streaming game are the same reasons. In retrospect, it's kind of a ridiculous game to talk about because there's nothing for anyone to grab onto. Like we've talked about this.
We would just have to make
really interesting, precise, cool thing, but that's totally abstract. And then similarly, watching it being played,
it's just us screaming.
Yeah, you wouldn't not ever having played it. Like it's hard to understand why it feels cool to play. But I mean, we could try streaming it sometime and see.
Nidhogg is a game that's incredibly fun to play, but that game is also really fun to watch. And I feel like this game
that's true.
Probably isn't as extreme as Nidhogg in that regard because with Nidhogg, it's two fencing guys and one person will like throw a sword halfway across the level and impale someone in their head.
And there's the like progressive moving from screen to screen, and
that's exactly what I thought about watching Pole Riders.
But in this game, like Chris, when we were playing on the ice level. Also, this game has an ice level because it's a video game. It has a grass court, a clay court, and an ice court.
Yeah.
But when we were playing on the ice court, we were just slipping around like complete idiots. But that was when we had some of our best volleys. And and Sean, you weren't playing, but you were like crying. That was the time you were crying because you broke things. No, you were actually interested in the volleys that were occurring. During
it was really fun to watch.
We'll fraps a few after during the break, I guess. I guess we'll do
Why are you being... What do you gotta...
What? I'm saying we'll do it. I'm saying you convinced me that it's a worthwhile game to watch.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a game that I wish just could exist.
I bet it will. Maybe not.
It's interesting that there is this whole... There seems to be, Pole Riders is obviously publicly available, and then there's stuff like Nidhogg and this, which aren't really... like. There seems to be a certain strain among a certain group of people, many of whom seem to know each other. I mean... I think guys like Bennett Foddy and
sort of like in-person social experience game stuff.
Yeah, from a certain group of people who tend to go to a lot of these festivals that are these games that are very simple, have very simple inputs, but actually have huge amounts of depth in the multiplayer competition. It seems to be in the last couple of years there's been a weird resurgence of that, but hardly any of them can actually be widely obtained, which is really weird.
Yep.
I wonder wonder what's going on with that.
A frustrating thing is going on.
Yeah, it is kind of frustrating because it's a really cool area of game design, I think. Like most really strenuously competitive games, like StarCraft 2 or like the Lords Management games, those games, there's great player versus player dynamics and like really cool strategy and like faking other players out and stuff like that. But they also are the most complicated games even to do anything in.
Yeah.
Like they require so much knowledge before you can even take step one.
Right. Whereas
these games have a lot of that depth.
Nidhogg, when it's actually being put on by Messhoff, the guy who makes it, when it's actually being shown, like when it was at the Independent Games Festival at GDC a couple years ago, or when it shows up at events, it's played with an NES controller.
Yeah.
So it's just a D-pad and two buttons.
Yeah. And Jake, you pointed out.
Yeah, like Tennnes or Tenness, whatever this is, since it's just stick plus one button, and the analog stick isn't speed variant at all, you could play it with an Atari 2600 controller. You could play it with a joystick with one button, and which is super... it's super pick up and playable, but at the same time, like you said, the mechanics of this and things like Nidhogg or Joust you can become destructively good at them. Mm-hmm. It's weird.
And it's actually fairly amazing that for a game that can be controlled with just nothing but direction and one button, it's amazing how expressive it is. Because even though movement in terms of velocity is binary on the input side, momentum is really important, and changing directions influences your velocity, and all those things that are true about movement. So you end up traveling at a huge variety of speeds at any given moment, but you're only using one speed input, to express it. Like the amount of total player expression is huge from incredibly limited inputs, which is really amazing. Yeah. I mean, games like that are tuned really well, like that I find really incredible from a design standpoint, because they need to not assume too much or too little from very little information.
Yeah, it's cool. Did either of you guys... Okay, so I was reminded of this because this game has kind of got a vintage thing going on aesthetically. I think a couple weeks ago we talked about this for 2 seconds, but did either of you guys end up playing or even looking at Hotline Miami?
Yeah.
No.
Did you actually play it?
Yeah.
Okay, because I own it. Okay, I put about a half hour into it at lunch today.
Oh,
and
this fucking game is like drugs, but bad drugs.
Yeah.
So it's like drugs, but bad drugs.
Yeah, it's not good drugs. It's fucking horrible.
Hotline Miami does such a good job of
bad drugs.
Of just evoking through mechanics and aesthetics a really very specific feeling that is really gross. Like you just
in sort of the film, you're able to.
You feel
describe the game in a second.
You feel tired and sweaty. Like you feel like your clothes are clothes you've been wearing for 3 days just by playing the game. For
that's why. So I haven't played this game, so I'm not going to have a lot to contribute. So I'll just say now, before you guys get into it, because I'm curious to hear this. That's why I haven't played the game.
You would like this game, though, which is...
I would like this game.
I think you would like this game.
I've heard people tell me Nick Brecken predicted I would hate this game.
I think given that you were
like it mechanically a lot.
I think given that you were able to get over / appreciate what the creative content in Binding of Isaac is trying to do, Hotline Miami would...
Yeah, that's fair enough. I'll give it a shot. I'll just quickly say, like, the reason... And again, you can't really judge anything by just a trailer or a screenshot or anything, obviously. But just, as like just my knee jerk to seeing the trailer for this game, I was so just repulsed by just that every trailer was just nothing
for sure.
Shotgun to face again and again and again. Well, I'm like,
that's what the game feels
this
like.
Is just gross. It's like I just can't. I don't want to be part of this.
The funny thing is there's a nuance and precision to the execution of the aesthetic that cannot be unappreciated. Like it is.
And then you know what the final straw was for me not playing this game, at least in that initial appraisal, which isn't to say I won't go play it now, but like they then released a live action trailer that just looked like the most fucking...
Oh, I'm so glad I didn't see that.
It was just like, you saw Drive, right?
Yeah.
It was just like a fucking dude saw Drive and just like...
That's a thing that's happening right
live
now,
action. I mean, it was like
right
a
now.
guy in an elevator
ruining
with
somebody's
a girl
Halloween.
and like a bloody bat. Like it was just so...
That sucks, and I'm really glad I didn't see that trailer.
Yeah.
But in Hotline Miami, well, go ahead.
Oh God.
I wanted to just like run the basics of it by.
Go ahead.
It's a game where it's set in the like late 80s.
The 80s in Miami, yeah.
Yeah, and you're an assassin who lives in a just hired killer who lives in a dumpy apartment. But the game, it's obviously trying to evoke the sort of like super ultra violent 80s crime aesthetic. But the thing that it evokes specifically in that is really, really quick, sloppy fight scenes that are always like the highlight of that kind of genre. Like it's a game where if you get shot, you die. But it's also
if you're touched.
If
you die.
Yeah, your guy just gets wiped instantly, and it's immediate respawn, like Binding of Isaac or Super Meat Boy or something. So it's just like
it's more like Super Meat Boy. In Binding of Isaac, you have health.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. But it's very much like Super Meat Boy.
So
you can die like maybe 100 times in a minute.
It's got a little bit of stealthiness to it in that you can sort of get the drop on guys, but it's basically you're in a top-down room full of just generic bad guys who are like guards who are armed with melee weapons or with weapons or like guns. And your objective is basically to
get to the end. You get to the goal. There's
sometimes
like a briefcase
it's just
and
to
get
kill
out.
all of them.
Yeah.
But the rapid pace of it, plus the very specific mechanics that it has on top of just kill guards, makes all of the sequences play out like Act 3 of a really drug-addled 80s movie in the most successful, gross way. Like, you can knock guys over by just pressing forward and getting a little bit of a run up on a door, which are kind of momentum based. So like these sequences where you bust into a house and knock over the door guard, pick up his knife, jump out of the way of the shotgun guy, throw the knife across the room and kill that guy, pick up the shotgun. Then another guy kicks the door down. You blow that guy away, pick up a baton, beat up, like smack a guy, which knocks his weapon out of his hands, then press your knees against his shoulders and punch him 4 times in the face till he dies, and all of that is like 8 seconds.
Yeah, it's all hilariously fast.
It's the sort of thing that it feels so much in your brain like scenes like that you see in just good, bad, like 80s crime movies, or like a thing like Drive. Yeah, or like Drive.
Okay, yeah.
But it's a thing that I think,
like a Death Wish movie or something like that.
It's maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
I was just going to say, it's a thing that this game creates those feelings and has that pacing and that like high density of event occurring that you can only, I think, do in a game in a top-down or in a 2D thing. Like, if this game tried to do that in a way that's aesthetically also matched the way that those films are shot, or even like look, I don't think it would be possible to do, just because the amount of information that your brain can process. Oh, I think you were talking about this actually, Sean, on one of the previous podcasts about the Castlevania guy at GDC talking about 2D versus 3D.
Yeah.
And Hotline Miami is a really good example of that.
Yeah, you couldn't have the sort of like precision, weird, like the high fidelity of
your
rapid
brain
fire
is just able to process
in 3D.
Since you only have to worry about 2 axes.
Yeah, you can get the whole thing.
Yeah, and it gives you a simulation correctly of being able to process information as fast as maybe you think that you could if you were a character in a film in that scenario, that I don't think you'd be able to do in a game that had another presentation.
No, I agree.
It's also weird that it just looks like old GTA games, but has...
It looks like GTA 1 or 2.
Yeah, but has heinous, horrible levels of violence far beyond anything that GTA games have ever had, but are always accused of having.
Right.
The amount of just the blood spray and just like
that stuff is over the top. But I mean, I think the
like fragile nature of human life.
I saw someone actually compare it. They were saying, I saw an article in which someone said, if you're going to compare this to any Rockstar game, compare it to Manhunt.
Huh. Manhunt seems more
I never played Manhunt.
Cold.
I didn't either, but
I always got the impression that Manhunt was a lot slower paced and like.
I don't have any opinion on it.
I don't know. I didn't play Manhunt.
Yeah. I don't know. It's not necessarily a game that I really like, but it's a game that I'm going to keep playing. I don't really know how to describe it. Like, I don't think... I don't know. Like, it is just so... The execution on it's really great, though. Just a sort of, like, VHS style, almost like film over the cutscenes, and the way the colors sort of warp on the title screen, and then you have these...
That stuff actually reminds me of Nidhogg. Where it's sort of retro aesthetic, and also actually Tennnes also does that.
Tennnes
where
does
it's
that too.
Retro game, but then also looks a little bit like it's an artifact pulled from an old era.
Yeah. It does all that stuff really well. I love the first, and I don't know. I'm kind of the fact that the first mission is like at the Brickell Metro stop in downtown Miami. Like, that's like a real place. Like, it's just really sort of strange in that level of execution, which is something that the GTA games never do because it's a
It's always made up.
How far into it are you?
Oh, I'm like 3 missions in. I'm not very far.
Okay, I'm only a couple missions in, because you know how it's a goofy touch, but between every mission, you just go to a convenience store or a pizza parlor and buy food.
Yeah.
And the clerk always knows you and has your order ready, and I'm assuming that's going to go somewhere probably terrible. But as of right now...
Do you get the masks in order? You always have a mask on when you go to these jobs?
I think that you get the first few masks in order, and then you can earn more later on.
Because I have a rooster mask and an owl mask.
Yeah, they give you...
That I murder people while wearing, which is horrible.
They give you different abilities, apparently. Oh. Which is weird.
I'd be really interested to hear what you think about the game.
Yeah.
But I'm also very, very bad because I'm playing like WASD with a mouse, and you kind of like have like radial control. I mean, the same way you do in Binding of Isaac. But I always play Binding of Isaac with a 360 controller.
Apparently, gamepad support is unofficially supported right now. You can sort of modify.
Key?
No, you can modify some file to add Xbox controller support, but it's officially coming very soon.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, gamepad support's coming soon.
Yeah. But
man, I didn't know you'd been playing Hotline Miami. I just fired it up today.
Playing means I started playing a couple days ago, but we're really busy playing a video game.
Just as an aesthetic thing, I like it a ton. The soundtrack is crazy. The soundtrack's phenomenal. The art is it's a lot of really goofily bold choices that sometimes are bombastic and stupid, and sometimes I think are just really strong, but it all works cohesively pretty well.
There's also really like sort of better story moments happening than you think there should be. You start off in a tutorial in sort of this really like seedy, sort of undefined space. You just feel like you're in the back room somewhere, and there are people in straitjackets in 3 different rooms, and that's how you learn to do violence. It's really fucked up. Yeah, you would hate it. But this guy is teaching you how to do it, and he's like, get the gun, go in the other room, kill that guy. And you're like, what is this? Like, it just feels like,
Did you
like
notice,
weird
though?
sort of non-sensory conditioning, and then you murder that guy at the end of the first level. Like, your
paths cross, but
paths
on
cross
an
with that
implied
guy.
different side. Like,
Yeah.
you make a drop, and then the guy's just like, who's there? And he shows up, and then you have to kill him.
Yeah, it's very strange.
It's
so you
weird.
do the whole tutorial, then you go on this mission with a big cutscene at the beginning. So you're doing a job for this guy that sort of gets interrupted by the guy who taught you the tutorial, but it feels like a happenstance interaction with the guy. It's executed that level
it's my
of
hope
nuance,
that
and you
level
murder
of
him.
weirdness keeps happening.
Yeah, which is bizarre. I think you might be turned off by the tutorial, but at least play the first level.
Yeah, no, I'll check it out.
Anyway, sorry. Wow. Hotline Miami, a game. You should play it, I guess. Unless you would, don't like
I think Nick and Steve have finished it. Says their Twitter conversations back and forth. Apparently, there's a stealth mission that might be the end of me
That everyone
coming
hates,
up.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird that that's still a thing people do.
We do it accidentally all the time.
Surprise stealth missions.
Dude, you do it all the time when you're making games that are set pieces like this, that are like, people do it all the time. It's a
I
bad
know they
thing.
do.
Yeah.
It's weird that people always don't catch themselves, though.
Yeah.
People have mostly gotten away from accidentally putting a huge maze in the middle of their game. But a big stealth puzzle.
Yeah. Cut those water levels. Gotta do that too.
Cut that ice court.
No, double down on the ice court.
There's no lava court.
Yeah.
Where if you step off the edge, it's lava.
The more when you said ice court, I thought of night court. And that.
Why do games keep having these night court levels in them?
Yeah.
I can imagine Hotline Miami having a night court level.
Oh gosh, maybe I keep playing this game. Yeah.
What are we doing?
Taking a break.
Taking a break.
Ice court, night court.
I don't know enough about night court to make any jokes about it.
Oh really? It's like an old.
No, I mean
Bruce
I know.
Willis,
I know.
yeah.
I just don't. I don't have anything in my brain. You know what I mean? Like I don't remember anything.
Yeah.
About it. Video game.
It's just a nighttime level, but everybody has like a little, like the little block has a tie.
Video games.
Pooched pop screen.
Pooched.
Pop screen is the new dots.
Pooch. Oh, it's pooch.
Oh.
Video games.
Saying I wore a chicken helmet. I shotgunned a guy in the belly. Then cut.
I wore a chicken
I
helmet.
dressed up like an owl and made some child an orphan by killing his father in an office building. Cut.
Video games.
You know what I did want to talk about?
What?
Kind of a soft opening in case this isn't something we really want to talk about.
What?
The level of animation fidelity that we were talking about, remember on the panel about like, we were talking about animation fidelity being sort of like a sort of
On the panel?
when we did at PAX, we were talking about animation fidelity in through the lens of Spy Party and how sort of
Oh, Spy Party. Yeah.
yeah, and sort of like how the bad animation was sort of
Yeah.
like almost like a feature.
Yeah.
Got me thinking about Dota.
Mm-hmm.
And animation in that game is so tied to the mechanic down to the like 10th of a second.
Uh-huh.
I think
Kind
that's
of like
really,
fighting games.
yeah. But it's not something you really think about when you think of Lomas as a casual user.
No, you don't think about animation as
Yeah.
like important.
But like animation stopping and
Or rather, I
like,
think of it as just perfunctory, right? Like it's just
right.
It's just there because it's 3D world
It has
and
to
you
happen.
need to have it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, but I don't think about it. But I'm sure that stuff has to be tuned incredibly carefully.
Yeah.
And I remember from in StarCraft 1, and I'm sure there's an equivalent of this in StarCraft 2, but it's easier to quantify in StarCraft 1 because it was all 2D artwork.
Frame based.
Yeah, exactly. People would like pros would know exactly at what frame like the projectile launches or you know the guy gets hit or whatever. I mean, like they would know specifically in the animation when everything happens, and they would use that in the actual control of the game, which is crazy.
But, I mean, all that stuff is in Lomas for sure.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's in StarCraft 2 as well. It's just, it's harder to someone who doesn't just have that in their, just down to their core of their being. It's harder to identify when it's not like frames of a 2D animation.
Yeah. Figuring out how to just animation stop or cancel can help you get last hits really easily. It's not difficult. I'll show you. Yeah, but I had a broader thought. I was walking around the other morning and I was thinking about this. And just how much animation fidelity is... Oh, right. So this is the thing that I think is really... Like, I think... Like, I don't want to start a flame war between Dota players and League of Legends players, and certainly not...
But you're gonna...
You don't want to start that flame war.
Yeah, you don't want to be
don't want to start that online adversarial relationship.
I don't want to begin it.
It's been pretty peaceful.
You won't begin it, I guarantee. That you might fan a flame.
Yeah. Anyway, you don't want to do whatever, but
you'll find an unburned
But it does occur
branch.
to me, and I mean...
It does occur to me that League of Legends is bullshit. I mean, I'm just...
Oh, yeah, it's for babies.
No, I have no opinion.
It's actually a BOMA. Baby
Oh, I
management.
thought that was bowel movement or something.
Oh, that's gross.
More like...
No poop jokes here. Especially not on Halloween, Chris.
That's true. Anyway, what was the observation you're going to make about these games?
Oh, that there is... So because there's like a flat mechanical platform, like everybody's sort of building on top of the same knowledge base of how to make these games. I think because so much of the enjoyment of the game and the execution of the game is down to like these crisp, finite details, there is sort of like this fit and finish war that is happening, I think, between the different games that I find really fascinating, which is a thing that in games... Like, you're never pushed for that last 10% in development unless you internally push yourself.
Yeah.
You know, but...
Especially not on a single-player game.
Yeah. But because of the nature of the marketplace for Lomas right now, it feels like not only executing, not only... Like, they just put in a whole bunch of new injured animations over the past 6 months where, like, as your health falls below a certain threshold, your guy starts limping and holding it. It's awesome. It's really nice. And all the little...
So there's like a decadence race going on?
Yeah, there's this decadence race, but it's also... but it's in service of the mechanics. It's in service of the crisp, polished final product, because that's what you're going to want to see in the competitive scene, and that's what you're going to want to play.
That's also a lot of the feeling you don't get from and it's it's unfortunate because it's expensive to do this, but a lot of times when you play otherwise very novel, clever multiplayer games from very small studios, they can just never catch on. They can just never get that critical mass, and part of it's because they're missing a certain amount of marketing and just visibility, but part of it's also often when you play especially a 3D multiplayer game from a smaller studio that's like it's their first game or something,
right?
That really just last few percent of just really finicky crispness often just isn't there.
Right.
And you're like, oh, this is a really cool concept. I like this idea. Oh, it's a team-based objective thing with this and that. But like it doesn't have that really, really just final thing.
It doesn't have the last 5%, which is actually the last 8 months of tuning or whatever.
Yeah, and that's something that I associate with like Halo has that as well. Like Quake 3 has that. Like the game, like that. Just really the crispness to them, even though they're different kinds of games.
Yeah,
Blizzard games always have that, or multiplayer games anyway. It's really hard to achieve, and it's different. It's all the more interesting now, I guess, as you say, because these are free to play games that are just constantly in development.
Right.
Even multiplayer
the free to play is
games.
The other aspect of the sort of decadence race, right? Because when you're free to play, you do have to just be the prettiest girl to dance. You know what I mean?
When you're constantly bringing in more money, so you've got to reinvest it to keep up with the other guy, who's constantly also bringing in more money. The Riot Games is like right now the biggest free to play publisher in at least North America and possibly the world, and they have one game.
It's amazing.
Like it's crazy. It's nuts how huge these games are, these Lomas. Yeah. It's totally insane.
And I like that there's multiple versions of them. I like that there's League of Legends, and I love that because it is creating this competition. It's also creating this sort of
I think that's something that isn't there right now
around the game
in RTS.
Yeah, not at all. Like, but there's this sort of tone around the game, sort of the community, and like just why it's actually like financially reasonable and totally makes sense for Valve to invest in something like the International, just to create this sort of like cachet around the game that then sort of informs the level of creative choices that are made within the game, which then enforces the sort of stuff that you do outside of the game to promote the game. And it's this like game design / marketing feedback loop of like capital Q quality that I think is fascinating.
And the funny,
like really
the interesting
amazing
thing about these games, or the interesing thing, one of the bajillion interesting.
What is the one interesting thing, Chris?
I figured it out, guys.
Really,
I figured out the
cleave
interesting thing. But specifically with respect to game development, as opposed to like the gameplay or whatever. But like one of the things I find that I struggle with a lot actually when I'm thinking about these games is that a lot of the things that I find really important in kind of the creative aspects of games, especially from single player standpoint, which is like stuff I've worked on at Double Fine has been single player. Obviously, Bioshock has been single player, and like the certain standards or like minimum thresholds I have for just my personal enjoyment of like how a game looks or what it's about or what the characters are like or this or that. Those things are just totally irrelevant, or they're totally differently relevant in a multiplayer game like this than they are in a single player game. Like, especially when they don't even have a single player component.
Of course.
Unlike, again, something like Halo or StarCraft or something, which is actually building on single player campaigns with this weird feedback between the two. But in these games, there's nothing, they don't have to worry about that at all. And so a lot of the things that I would criticize just personally, if this were a single player game that was, you go through it with a character and there's a story, things that I would just find really dumb.
Right. Like, you don't want to be like the flame throwing redheaded girl.
It's just ridiculous.
Has nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. But in a game like this, those criticisms are just meaningless. Like they just have there's basically nothing relevant about them.
No, you just, you're literally like going to a sport and criticizing the jerseys.
Right.
Sort of
yeah,
thing.
exactly. Yeah, right. Exactly. That's it. Yeah. And that makes it all the more weirder that even on top of that, they're not like that because they are these very specific like characters with actual voices with actors who are playing them and all this shit. Like
it's insane.
It's very weird. My brain doubles back on or like my critical brain specifically doubles back on itself again and again when I'm thinking about like the creative aspect, like the purely like visual and kind of lore shit in these games. I find it very hard to come to an opinion on.
Yeah.
So I just don't bother most of the time.
Will you be sad when there's a Dota 2 novelization?
I'm sure there will be comics.
Or will you not
I'm sure
care?
Valve will do a bunch of that stuff. I just won't pay any attention to it. Like
that Dota 2 documentary is going to be rad, though. Maybe. I'm really excited about it, though. I think it's really cool that Valve is doing that. I think that's awesome. I know we talk a lot about the sort of multidisciplinary aspects of Valve, or Valve sort of spiraling off.
Yeah.
That documentary being done by Valve, I think, is really cool and just sort of interesting to me. Like what that means. Like, I don't know. It's a cool choice.
Speaking of the sort of crispness and all that stuff, it reminds me, like in reverse of Hawken, which I've been playing not very much because it's in a sort of limited beta right now, but it's that mech game.
Yeah, that has just this like,
mech game.
Yeah, I was super excited about
intense,
when
like following right now.
Yeah, when that thing got announced, I was super excited about it, and then I forgot to even investigate how to get into the beta, so I feel dumb.
Yeah,
if there was even a way.
There was a
really
sign up a long time ago, I think.
A lot of the sort of fervor around it has been because it just looks amazing.
Yeah,
right?
It looks crazy. Well, actually, what was so interesting about it is that when I first played it, it was in alpha. And I loaded up the alpha, and this was months ago, and it was NDA'd at the time, which is why I didn't talk about it on the podcast. And so, whereas now it's in beta, and it's not NDA'd anymore. And I loaded it up, and I don't know if there's a single player or not, or what, but it's multiplayer only, at least in the alpha and beta, which makes sense. And I joined a server, and I started playing a game, and I'm like, there's something weird about the geometry here. Like, what's going on? And then I realized it was a legit alpha. Like, I was playing a gray box map, which I thought was really cool. I've rarely encountered that in an actual public or semi-public, even invite-only thing. Like, that's usually a thing that you only experience within the development studio really early in development before. I know Valve does that kind of playtesting, but I doubt they do it on online servers.
Yeah, they probably don't put builds out like that.
Yeah, it was really cool. I thought it was actually really awesome. And like playing the game and getting to know the map when it was just a bunch of BSP, basically, just big boxes everywhere, was really interesting and not an experience I've had playing like somebody else's game. And I thought that was cool. And I don't have tons to say about it except that when I loaded up the beta today for the first time, the difference in visuals was like just mind exploding. Because one of the things that this game sells itself on is just how it looks like those crazy cities you see in China that are like just built on top of themselves forever. And there's like just scaffolding coming out of everywhere and like unfinished walls coming out of things. Like it looks like the crazy future vision of mega cities that you see in like comic books and movies and stuff, but has rarely been achieved in an actual real-time 3D game. Like it looks like Fallout 3 concept art with like shelled out crazy buildings and stuff.
Yeah, the aesthetic of that game is out of control.
Yeah, and all the layers over your actual viewport into the world have this crazy like transmission looking feeling to them where it looks like you're, I mean, there's just the amount of transparent things that are overlaid between your eyes and the actual like environment, like all the stuff that's involved in the actual canopy of your cockpit and all of the overlays going onto it is just all very, very dense. Like everything's dense. The geometry is dense. Your HUD is super dense. It's just crazy. It looks like how all of the extreme visions of futuristic, like robotic vision.
Well, it just looks like what a painting of the cover of a mech game looked like, but the game itself never looked like. I mean, like
but
the
it looks
best,
even more like outrageous and baroque than that. Like, but the thing that's craziest to me about it is the reason I bring this up in the context of the Dota thing is that this is a multiplayer game, and I find myself I don't know what to make of it because it's a multiplayer game where it's really competitive and like someone could just hit me with a rocket at any moment. But there's all of this shit in front of
that you want to look at and go over to an experience.
So there's that. But then there's also just in between me and this guy, there's like just 8 transparent layers of like overlays and crazy particle effects and like weird little readouts and things. And
it's a situation where the people who are the best at it are going to the people who basically can see through all that shit better than you.
Yeah. And it's really interesting in a certain way, but it also seems kind of potentially abusable. Like, are there like config files that people can edit to like chop some of that shit out so they just have a clearer view of things? Like, are people just going to turn down their graphical options to get, you know what I mean? It seems,
Are people going to try and blur the textures away?
Yeah. If it was a single player game, I feel like that wouldn't be an issue.
Right.
You would just accept this is what the game feels like, and it would be part of the emotional experience.
Well, that's exactly what you can do in DayZ is start turning off your full screen color effect. You can start turning off your post-processing. So when you're wounded and like falling in and out of consciousness, you can still see and get the fuck away from the guy who's trying to kill you.
Yeah.
Which is crazy that level of, and that's because it's a mod though, that stuff is still like forward facing. So you can, if you don't turn that off, you're getting a less aesthetically pleasing experience, but a more mechanically advantageous.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I didn't try going into the graphical options. I mean, I'm sure some of that stuff, just so that it can run on more hardware, is able to be turned down.
But because it's not a mod, there's they probably know what stuff they can and can't give access to you.
Yeah, but I still think that people who want to be competitive in a multiplayer setting are probably just going to turn as much of it off as they can.
How far do you think it is between you playing the game casually and sort of you getting it all feeling really intuitive and like, okay, a rocket's coming from 9 o'clock?
I'm sure it would not take very long, honestly. Like all of the stuff you need is in the HUD. You've got your, it's very classical mech stuff where you've got your heat meters on each of your weapons and like, or if one of them's a missile, it's, reloads periodically and you've got your little kind of mech game or Halo style little radar that has blips when enemies are within however much distance, like just stuff like it's got.
Why does it sound so exciting to me? Sorry,
it's really cool.
I don't know.
You're just describing it as like, oh man, mech shit. Why do I care about mech shit? Like
play it after we're done.
I played Mech Warrior 2 or something. Was the last time I played a mech game.
I mean, it definitely there is something playing it that feels very, very different, just because it's a genre that's been really ignored for a long, long time. I was never even I was never super into it or anything, but it still feels really novel in a cool way, just because it's been so ignored. I mean, games that look this good, games that have this much attention paid to them visually.
They're not a multiplayer mech combat game.
Yeah, in the last few years, that kind of game has been a very specific kind of game. It's been a shooter where you're a guy who runs around shooting people, like on foot. That's what that...
What if you're like a giant robot guy who flies around a city and shoots a guy?
The last experience I can remember of a game that had this specific visual approach to mech stuff was like Fear 2 of all things, or maybe it was Fear 3, I can't remember. But Fear 2 or 3 had
a big mech
you get into with all the crazy like video effects, like interlacing and all that shit coming down over your screen and it was a cool effect. Like it really sells it. But that was just a little goofy escapade in the middle of a big first person shooter. It was, it wasn't an actual thing you sit down and play.
Is Hawken a game that you think would benefit from the Oculus Rift?
Probably. I mean, it definitely is visually.
I mean, like a mech
totally
game
suited to the Oculus
If there's
Rift.
any game that should be played with a VR headset, it feels like it's a multiplayer arena mech game. Just because
the ideal. I mean, this is indulgent as shit and ridiculous, but like the
mech.
actual way. Yeah, if you just built a mech, the actual way this game should be played is with something with just those glasses that overlay information but still allow you to see through them.
So you want like the Google glasses, but then
you want the
and
Google
that those have all your HUD elements.
What if you have the Google glasses and then you also have an Oculus Rift strapped on top of that?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Okay,
and so you still have the full like immersive.
But you could simulate that just with one Oculus Rift, but it's sorry. Why would you want that though? When you could look at the glasses, then focus beyond them to your screen.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah. Okay. Because that's a thing that is never simulated in games like these, is the difference in focus between foreground and background.
Although people complained that the Oculus Rift did not support that through eye tracking.
Oh, really? Did they complain about that?
Because, there are...
that's why you need these two separate apparatus.
There's digital cameras now where it sort of tries to look at where you're looking in the image and will match focus to where your eye is tracking. And there were people who said, what? Oculus Rift doesn't do eye tracking and then automatically adjust focal planes? It's like, who would want that in a game? That would be insane.
So distracting. Yeah,
I think
be terrible.
There are just places where you need to just give your brain a full image and let it do its own abstracting and not try to simulate that stuff. Or you'll be like, my eye is already focusing on a screen, but then something is going out of focus inside of that plane that I'm looking at.
Then it starts detecting your two eyes separately.
Yeah. And then the guy who wins is the guy who turns off eye tracking.
Yep. So
I see the whole image at once.
Hawken is an interesting thing. I'm curious to play it more. And I'm sure if I played a bunch of rounds of it, I would start to just see through all of those elements a lot more easily. But the having played it in the alpha phase where it was still visually impressive, but way, way, way less ornate. It was just, that was my first experience, was loading this up and just being totally overwhelmed by just the amount of just crap that was being thrown in my eyes. It was crazy. I mean, it's
interesting.
It's gross. the amount of the number of differently colored pixels, like just because everything is like there's no flat surfaces anywhere in this game. Everything is really
Hawken is Baroque as
almost
fuck.
Fractal like. Yeah, exactly. It's cool. I mean, it's really impressive. I'm not sure how I feel about it in the context of a competitive multiplayer game, but just purely from an aesthetic standpoint, it's amazing. And I'm usually not someone who is a big fan of just kind of ruined cityscapes and just kind of super complex textures and stuff. But like I really feel like they sell the aesthetic really well in this. Like it makes a lot of sense in the context of what they're doing. So I mean, that's really cool.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to read some mail from readers?
Let's do that.
Ooh, reader mail.
Oh, reader mail.
Mail from you, the readers.
Reader
mail.
Halloween mail.
I wonder if it's Halloween.
Oh, it's Halloween.
I think it is.
Didn't you hear that lightning bolt?
What?
The lightning bolt that you just put in right there.
You
sounds like Halloween.
Son of a bitch. Nope, I didn't hear that. I definitely didn't hear that. All right. Greg C. writes.
Wait, was that another one?
I think it might have been.
Two things, guys.
Oh, no, Chris.
What? No, weird. I just don't hear any. I can't hear any.
Right. I thought I heard.
If you go back on the tape
and
listen, you'll hear them.
Greg C. says, two things, guys. One, I work at GameStop. The other day I was talking to a dude about Call of Duty or some game, and he mentioned something about space. And I mentioned something about space. His response was,
I want to know this conversation.
That's stupid. Who likes space? It's so boring and quiet and dumb. Nothing cool happens in space. I could take it or leave it. I immediately thought of your love of space and then thought about how normal people think space is rad and thought you would appreciate that too.
Apparently normal people don't think space is rad.
Apparently normal people
God,
think
I wish
space
I had
is
an
boring
entire
and dumb.
transcript of that conversation. So yeah, no. Blops is 2s. You go ahead and get your pre-order in for sure. And then we can give you a deal like the Call of Duty 3 comes with the full DLC pack now for $49.95. Yeah, so space. Like, how do you get
right, so anyway,
remember that part in Call of Duty 3 where there was space for a second?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was lame. That was the worst part of that game.
Who likes space?
I don't like space.
Space is the worst.
Oh, sorry. I just meant you look up at the night sky inside of one of the maps.
No, that sucks. They shouldn't have sky in those. That's where space is, and it's boring.
There's a hard 3 count. He's like, so you listen to the thumbs.
Anyway, baboo, bye.
What was the name of the reader you wrote in?
Greg C. He has another question. He says, I don't know if I'll be able to answer this. He says, Chris, I was wondering if you could solve a dispute for me. In the original Idle Thumbs theme, Wuxtree, there is a soprano counterpoint line that you wrote starting in measure 5, assuming a metronome marking of around 112. All right. Is that line you singing in falsetto or synth strings? If it is in fact you singing, would you mind telling Connolly he's wrong and that I win music? Otherwise, I'll admit defeat. Thanks, you guys are the best, Greg C.
This is the most interesting GameStop on the planet.
There's no synth strings in that, are there?
No.
I thought it was just synth, harpsichord, guitar, and multiple U's.
I'm trying to think. Yeah,
and by U's, you mean
so
female
the only
sheep.
Instruments going on in the original recording of Idle Thumbs, there's the organ, there's electric guitar.
There's organ?
I'm sorry, there's harpsichord.
Like digital harpsichord?
Yeah. There's harpsichord, there's electric guitar. I think there's electric guitar, rhythm guitar, and then there's electric guitar.
Like distorted.
Very high notes that maybe he's thinking of.
Maybe, yeah.
And then there's a lot of me overdubbing on myself.
Yeah, there's like, at the end it's got like the meadly-meadlies, like, wow, going on. Yeah. That's probably you singing, though. Just going, wow.
I did used to do a lot more like high falsetto harmony stuff when I was overdubbing like lots of harmonies at the same time. And then like the later Idle Thumb stuff is more just me singing only like 2 lines in closer harmony in like a tenor or baritone range. So I can't remember. Maybe I'll look it up and reply to this guy because I just can't remember. I can't remember at all. I'm sorry, Greg C. I should have read that before reader mail, and then I could have looked it up and figured it out. Anyway, sorry, I dropped the ball on that.
Jesus.
Thane Smith says, Dear Thumbs, in the old days, you guys would sometimes remark that video games narratives seem to recycle stories, most often those from Alien, Blade Runner, or more recently The Hero's Journey. Recognition of patterns happens a lot in other media like art or fashion. It's usually seen as a good thing. Sometimes, though, I find myself wishing I could just turn off my brain to enjoy Dead Space. Do you think it's more of a benefit or a hazard to our personal enjoyment to be constantly evaluating games or art in light of what has come before? Thanks. Thanatos from the forums.
This is like that South Park episode.
Right. Where everything is shit.
Stan can only see poop.
Yeah.
I think the thing that he's saying about art, within fine art or within music, that sort of self-referencing and working within sort of set styles is not
what's happening.
Well, no, it is what's happening. I mean, people work in very specific styles. There's very specific eras that it's then considered interesting and acceptable to call back, but those are all internal to the medium.
Right. That's what I was saying. Now what's happening in terms of games. I think that would be
I think that does happen within games, but it happens mechanically.
That's true. Mechanically, it happens to an extreme degree. Yeah.
But as far as creative content, like narrative and aesthetic stuff,
I mean,
it's different because it's
the thing with it narratively in games is that it just never. It seems like almost never does anything interesting ever actually arise from that. It's
right.
Like,
it doesn't feel like
another hero's journey thing, and
it's
just it's a guy who just ends up marching through and killing a bunch of guys, and then some stuff happens. Maybe it's just it's all
coming,
or it's like Aliens in the sense that yes, it's about a bunch of Marines who kill a bunch of aliens. Like it's just those. I feel like that kind of reuse of structure or plot lines or thematic elements or whatever or settings tends to just be very like surface level and kind of basic in games.
Yeah, I think it doesn't feel like it's sort of a long-term exploration by a medium to refine.
It is admittedly a thing that is true of a lot of media in its way older forms. I mean, the notion of a comedy is a story that ends in a wedding.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, that's not what comedy is defined as. That's also not just a trope that people think of when they think of writing narrative fiction.
Yeah, but that
was a piece of the medium in its earlier forms.
That's still, I don't think, what's happening in games, though. Like, I don't think we're going to have I don't foresee an era of meta hero's journey where we've turned that form on its head to broaden our potential narrative base. I don't see that happening.
Okay.
That's just not. I just don't feel like it's the same thing. It feels for a lot of different reasons, and I think it's because it's a much more like heterogeneous media landscape now. So the attachment to something is
it's
concrete.
It's not a formalized like there's no such thing as the notion of a hero's journey game. People don't proclaim I'm working within the hero's journey form.
Also, I think
whatever, and also it would be weird if
I
they
think
did.
the equivalent of that, Jake, as you kind of implied earlier, in games is just more. It's more of a gameplay thing. It's like in the sense that if you write a sonata, that means a very specific thing. Where it has these movements, and it'll then transpose to like the tonic or whatever, and this will happen. Like very specific things happen when you write a sonata. In the same way that when you do a first-person shooter, it's understood that you'll have these very specific verbs, and like the things you change tend to be around the margins. Like they tend to be little things that make your game distinct.
But in this version of these, you can do this one other thing,
right? But fundamentally, it's like you've got multiple weapons you select from, and you run and jump around, and there's these very specific core formal elements that are always there, and like narratively, that stuff just seems very mushy, and it's just kind of very general and like perfunctory a lot of times in games.
The one thing I would say, I mean, just to get to the root of, there was a question. It's like there's almost sort of an ignorance is bliss question being asked. I think is it like if you're not is it better to not sit here and sort of be so critical of the things that are coming at you and just sort of sit down, like shut your brain off and enjoy them? What was the actual language of the question?
Well, he was saying to a certain degree, maybe it would be nice to be able to do that, but I can't. Or like sometimes I wish that I could just sit down and...
I think there's a beta state where you can sort of have a critical analysis brain that's putting media in and thinking about it as whether it's quality or not and what it means to the sort of state of the industry or to you or how it makes you feel, and disregard and then enjoy the stuff that is interesting to you without getting too down on the fact that things are bad.
Yeah.
I think and that's something that's important to try to do.
There's also a couple different ways, though, that things can be not good, right? Like there's the, even if you've never heard of the hero's journey before or never seen Aliens or whatever, I think it would still be very possible to play a game and be like, well, this is just dumb. Like these characters.
Oh yeah, stupid. Yeah. You don't have to be aware of
pattern recognition or not. Like you can be aware that something's just poorly crafted, and then even beyond that, like
you see that in a lot of actual critique. People just like, well, this is trite. No, I've seen this before, but they're not getting down to the depths of like what does that actually mean. Yeah.
And then there's also then even beyond that, there's like in serious criticism of literature or film or whatever. Then there's like, well, this actually is pretty well crafted, but ultimately there's nothing about it that's all that different from these 18 other things that have happened.
It's sort of the way you've been talking about Dishonored, at least I have been, which is like, God, I'm so impressed by this game and so much that's going on. But like the formalized creative content,
like the narrative,
like the explicit narrative is just sort of like, ugh.
Tim Javadov writes, Dear Idle Thumbs, how many different games are you usually playing at a time? To narrow it down further, are you often playing through 2 or more single-player campaigns at the same time? Personally, while I'm almost always playing more than one game, they fill different roles. This means I never have more than one single-player experience going. I won't even interrupt a playthrough because something potentially better is sitting on the shelf. It's either worth finishing or not. I'm the same way about novels, even though what I value in books usually doesn't have much in common with what I value in games. Sincerely, TTG from the NeoGAF forums.
I don't. With novels, I only read one at a time. I'll often read twice at two. I'll sometimes read 2 at a time, but that means one of them is on its way out.
I usually end up having one book that's backburnered.
But you're holding more in your head with a book. You have so much to just sort of keep in line, names and images, and everything's got to be like filed away so you can jump.
With the games, when I'm playing a lot of games, it's not uncommon for me to be playing more than one at a time. But right now, I'm playing one.
I'm playing like 3.
No, I'm playing
Hotline Miami.
Sorry, I have 2 games running concurrently, but just very, very slowly.
Which ones?
Hotline Miami and Dishonored.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm really getting those narratives confused. There's a crazy game in my brain.
With games, it's just anywhere from 0 to 3, I guess. Like I don't. It doesn't feel like you don't need to take much with you, like in a game.
Right.
Usually, I mean the things that are important to keep with you are things like muscle memory that are just involuntary.
Right.
Like you don't. Yeah. It's not like a book where it's active. It's like actively needs to be kept in your brain, or it will just fall out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess right now I'm playing mainly XCOM and Dishonored, And I guess that's pretty much it. And then just like little bits of things here and there, but pretty much
just a touch of Hawken.
Yeah.
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 I was like, man.
Video Gone writes, I'd like to offer a couple of very belated pronunciation corrections.
I thought that guy's name was going to be Video Gong, and for some reason that made me happy.
Maybe that's what it is. He says, firstly, VG is not pronounced VG in the way that you guys pronounced it. There are two faults there. The first is that in classical Latin, there was no V sound. It would have sounded like a W. Also in Latin, all G's were hard, that is, in games, as opposed to in register.
So it'd be wiggy, wiggy, wiggy?
Wiggy, then. Secondly, the V rule also applies to in vino veritas, the well-known motto attached to the wine handler. So in vino veritas. Also, the R's in Latin are rolled or trilled. Also, while I'm on my Latin pronunciation, I'd like to add that I was disappointed that Nick Brecken's Skyrim included a character named Cicero who pronounced his own name Cicero when it should be Kikero. All that, great cast, keep it up. So, yeah. One thing I should point out in response to this is that VG existed as a pronunciation before it existed as a spelled out version of that, as I recall. Or
yes.
am I wrong about that?
Yeah.
So what actually happened, I guess, is we just spelled it wrong. I guess we made up a phrase that is unpronounceable in the language, the fake non-language that we imagined.
To which it was referencing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah.
We don't want to correct that Nick Brecken was definitely in charge of all character names and pronunciations in Skyrim.
Yeah, that was his job, I think.
Yeah.
Was make entire game.
But that character's name was actually fuck Cicero, but then they made him take that.
It was actually fuck Kikero, but there was some issues. People thought nobody would get it.
Yeah. Yeah. What?
Actually, you know what's funny about that? Is in another Bethesda released game, Fallout New Vegas, didn't the Roman-inspired guys call themselves Kaiser's Legion? Or something like that, which is actually correct. And a bunch of people were like, what the hell? Why don't they say Caesar? Which is incorrect. You know what I mean? This guy didn't bring that up, but I'm pretty sure that was a whole other thing that was actually correctly done in the game.
Well, you know about the backstory about Nick Brecken really wielding a pretty iron fist on Fallout New Vegas.
All Bethesda release games.
And then when moved on to Skyrim, there was sort of this power struggle for pronunciation between him and the creative director.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Todd Howard won that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, surprised you didn't know that.
Yeah, no,
A lot of inside baseball there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Video games.
Video games.
We made good on our promise at the break, so check out the blog if you want to see what Tennnes looks like.
That's Tennnes by one of the Vlambeer guys.
Mm-hmm. And you'll find that.
Oh wait, who's that guy at Bethesda?
Todd Howard.
Oh, what's his real name? On this October 31st episode,
Howler.
Oh, that's better. Thank you.
It's Halloween.
What were you thinking of?
Oh, I was thinking of that because it's Halloween. That's all. I was trying to get someone else to make one up because I had no idea. It was probably going to be Todd Howlard as well, though, because there's where else is that going to go?
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a Wolfman made that tennis game.
True. Okay.
Bookcast is going to be delayed a week.
Oh, yeah.
Because we're in crunch.
It's a good place.
Bye, guys.
Video games.
You know, I read the entire Wikipedia page for Ludo after recording last week.
It's the most boring, pointless game.
Not as boring as reading the Wikipedia page for it.
Probably true. Good job.
By the way, have
Did
you
you
read
know that in the UK Clue is called Cluedo?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the dumbest shit.
Yeah, they
it's
get all
French.
fucking uppity.
I think it's
about
because
it, too.
originally it's like a French.
No,
person.
it's a pun on Ludo. It's Clue plus Ludo.
Oh, that's fucking stupid.
It's
That's
really
some classic British bullshit.
Yeah.
This is going to be a short ass episode.
It's Halloween.